Someone's not gone until they're gone. Even if you know in advance and there's hospice and things like that, eventually there's that point in time where they're gone. So same thing in life, in a lot of things, like you're not alone in that room until the day that you're alone in that room. And right now, for example, in our brand process and what we're doing, there's people that are in the room that don't really have much contribution to make, but they're listening and they're watching and they're trying to understand how we get through it. Certainly I prepare them the best I can, and certainly I give them advice. And I would just say that diversity and those problems that you might encounter when I give you that responsibility is actually the most powerful thing that you're going to have in your next engagement, and your most powerful thing that you're going to have when it comes to growing.
How did you build better leaders in your agency? Like when you think back at our careers,
Mm-hmm.
We have the Rolodex of all the situations that have happened that we can kind of go, oh, you told me this problem, but it's really this problem. And then here's what we need to do. There's a lot of people listening that they go, no one else can do that. How did you get your team to that level as well? How did you level them up?
I think, Jason, that is where we are right now as an agency. That is actually where we are. And I think that you have to be comfortable enough and have enough momentum. I'd put it that way. It's not just sales, but enough momentum to let it be okay for them to fail in certain situations. But if you can't allow anybody to fail in any sales situation or any engagement, they're just not ever. I don't think I could write a book or write a pamphlet for them and say, read this, and then all of a sudden they're going to figure it out. It's like you're in that position.
Well, how did you start letting go of going, all right, because it's tough. Like when the agency's on the line and you have this big brand that you want to land and you want to train this person and you see them laying down on the railroad tracks, the train is coming, it's going to take off a leg. How do you not pull them off and say, I'll take it over?
I don't think that serves that individual. I certainly wouldn't lay him down on the tracks, maybe how you described it. But
I'm pushing them down on the tracks.
No, I know you're not. But I think that I would just say that diversity and those problems that you might encounter when I give you that responsibility is actually the most powerful thing that you're going to have in your next engagement, and your most powerful thing that you're going to have when it comes to growing. Certainly I prepare them the best I can, and certainly I give them advice. And and there's right now, for example, in our brand process and what we're doing, there's people that are in the room that don't really have much contribution to make, but they're listening and they're watching and they're trying to understand how we get through it. And eventually they're going to have to though lead one of those, and they're going to have to get through that conversation. So that's kind of one of the ways we do it. But it's kind of like, I would hate to use the example of death, but someone's not gone until they're gone. So they're even if you know in advance and there's hospice and things like that, eventually there's that point in time where they're gone. So same thing in life, in a lot of things, like you're not alone in that room until the day that you're alone in that room. And at that point, that's when I think, well, your question is about me, and you gave me some advice before this call, Jason, because we've been talking about a different issue that you've been working with me on, and you said, yeah, Torey, you just need to do it tomorrow. I mean, that's what the advice you gave me, right? And I think that's eventually where you get. It's not about whether they're ready necessarily, or whether it's just, all right, tomorrow's your day. There you go, and you have to let go of it at that time. And I don't think there certainly wasn't a green light on any device or computer I had that said that person's ready. It was just, here we go, and it's nerve wracking. I mean, it's. You could get strategic with clients, certain clients well, and which ones would accept a little bit of failure better than others. And maybe you use that tactic, but I don't think you always know for sure. I'm also quite surprised that there wasn't a lot of big failure. There was different ways of doing things sometimes, and some failure in parts of it, but I can't remember back and think of somebody that just completely bombed and lost a client and it was terrible. That fear that you might have also is unrealistic. So it always sits somewhere in between your biggest fears.
Well, I think it goes back to wait on certain things, right? So when you give the responsibility of the outcome, that's the key, I think, is giving the responsibility of the outcome that you are trying to get for that particular engagement, that client, from that team member. rather than delegating the task. And when I started making the switch, if I can start thinking back that long ago, I felt like if I kept doing it, the pain was going to be greater and greater. Like I wasn't getting better. Like, yeah, I was fixing the short term, but if I started thinking long term, going, I do want to get to a point where I have the option to sell one day. I do want to have the option to be able to take a vacation. So these people have to take over this. And why not today rather than put it off to tomorrow? And then I was able to make that decision mentally. Like that was the switch. And I don't remember anybody telling me that. So like, hopefully if you guys are listening and you guys are at that point, it's like, well, do you want to be doing this the rest of your life?
That's it. And I think though, if you can think like for all of us, when we're that invested, what we don't want our reputation to be affected by someone saying, oh yeah, I had an interaction with that company and this is what it was. And there's so much of our personality initially input into the business that I don't want somebody else in one action doing enough damage that would, and then, but what you have to do is get over that and realize, if you've trusted this employee for this long, what could they do? Like, what would you think they're going to do that much damage to the brand? And so,
yeah,
good.
And they're not, right?
Not.
Like if it was someone off the street, yes.
Yeah, right. But they're not. And so I think that you get, and what the exciting part is that once that you start handed over this responsibility is when the agency starts changing for the better, because some of those people start leading and they start making decisions about how we can do things better, and clients start engaging with them and doing things. I do remember, I think it was a few years ago, but I remember seeing a project on social media that was shared. I had no idea we signed it. I had no idea it was done, and I had no idea it was delivered. I had never seen that client before. And I was actually excited when I saw that, when that happened for the first time. And I saw that I was involved in no part of sales and no part of onboarding. I didn't write the contract. And, now that happens quite regularly. And there's some clients that I just really don't have a relationship with. And I've thought about whether I want that to be different. And clearly, if I had, Jason on my shoulder when I walk down the street, I know you'd be saying, don't worry about that. Like, don't sweat that. But it comes up here and there that I kind of worry, like, should I be more involved with some of the clients? And then I snap back to, we're headed down the right path. This is what we should be doing.
Yeah. And I think it's about training your team. And so I've always tried to train my team when they come to me with a problem. I try to remember, I don't do this all the time. So I'm a hypocrite sometimes on this because I can't, like, you can always give the best advice, but sometimes you don't take your own advice.
Yeah.
So I admit it, guys, right? So Stacy and Darby and all the rest of the team can come and like, yeah, Jason, you don't do it all the time, but you do it sometimes. So there's the disclaimer. But if you remember this form or this kind of framework, 1-3-1. So when your team comes to you with a problem, that's one problem, go to them and say, well, what are 3 possible things that you think we need to do to fix this? And then they'll talk through it. And then it'll be like, well, what do you think you need to do? And then they'll go do it. So if you do that enough and they come to you like 6 times, they're going to be like, I don't need to go to Jason anymore. Like, he's just going to do this 1-3-1 crap.
Yeah.
And then they can kind of do it in their head. And that gives them the confidence too. And they'll be like, oh man, Jason is really listening to me rather than what do you want me to do, Jason? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And, builds better leaders. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.